There we go. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how are you?
Good, very good. Thanks. How are you keeping?
Yes, and very, very good. Very, very good. I'm in Thailand, and not in Ireland, so I'm not as cold as my family are in Ireland. It's a little bit warmer here.
T-
So that's a
Tell you
positive.
what time. What time is it there, Paul?
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's
Oh,
2 o'clock in the morning. I'll be having my breakfast soon. I hope I hope
okay.
there's some students from Thailand or
Yeah.
somewhere
Well,
near me who are up at this time as well. I hope so. I'll do
yeah.
a chat.
We do have a very global group of students, Paul. So
You
I can
do.
see we've got what 32 attendees at the moment, and I can see that there's some very familiar names there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we've got someone joining from Thailand tonight. So
Well, we have
uh,
an individual from India just on the chat
hmm,
there, and
very good.
I've just come from India, and yoga. So
Wow,
so there's someone close to me. There's someone
excellent,
close to me for sure.
excellent. So, okay, great. We'll make a start. I'm gate crashing Paul's party. So my name is Thomas Newman, and I'm the founder of Viva Financial Tuition. And tonight we're hosting a free webinar for the February 2023 management case study. So tonight's session is free. We have a series of live sessions for the February 2023 MCS exam. The subsequent sessions, which will be going on from later this week onwards, are not free. So you will only be able to avail of those if you're a paying Viva customer. And I'll talk about some of the course options that you have if you want to pay for one of the courses that we have. So tonight is free. We're going to record the session. All of our sessions are recorded, but this free session, we will send out the recording to anyone who registered for this session tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes are the options that you have if you want to purchase one of Viva's courses and participate in the rest of our February 23 MCS course. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And let me see. So Paul, you might let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I can see that.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'll send out these links after tonight's session, but the first link here details what's included in our standard February 2023 MCS course. Okay, so there's about 39 hours of course content in total. We spread it out over I think it is 6 weeks. It might be 5. Let's say 6 weeks plus, well, really 7. We have this week of pre-course work that we recommend you go through as well. So there's plenty there between, and it's a mix of live webinar sessions like tonight's session and on-demand content that we have already on the website. So we've got, theory reviews of E2, F2, and P2. We've got videos on preparing for the case study. We've got videos on your exam day strategy, so managing your time well, how to write a good answer, what the examiner is looking for, etc. We've got a series of videos on a good answer and what that looks like. We compare it to a bad answer and what that looks like. So the things to avoid and the things to do if you want to write a good script. We've got a whole lot of content on the pre-scene analysis, which Paul did previously for the November 2022 sitting. This was the last sitting, and it's the same pre-scene as the one for February 2023. So completely relevant. There is an industry analysis that Paul did then as well. Tonight's session then is the first live webinar for the February 23 sitting. And that will be recorded, put up on the website so you can view it after. In week 2, then you've got your first mock exam based on this pre-scene. There are model solutions included. Then there is a recorded session on E2 applied. So there we take the most important theories from E2, we apply them to the pre-scene. We talk about likely exam scenarios and how you might answer those. And we do the same with F2 the following week, and we do the same with P2 the following week. So they're really, really useful. There are 5 mock exams that you get as part of the MCS, all based on this pre-scene. All of them come with model solutions, so really, really useful. In week 4, there's another live session, a mid-course checkpoint with Paul, and a question and answer session. The 5th week, then, you take the 4th mock exam, and there's a key issues recorded webinar that Paul did, where he details the 10 most important issues as they relate to this case and how you might respond to those should they come up on the day of the exam. And then there's a final live session in week 6. So it's an end of course checkpoint with Paul and a question and answer session there. So there's a good mix of live and pre-recorded materials. So lots of video tuition explaining everything very, very clearly. You have 5 mock exams, really, really useful with model solutions as well. And they're really key to, to getting exam ready. So that's the, the standard course option that we have. There's a lot more detail on this page, which I'll send to you after. And there are 2 ways basically to avail of this standard course. You can either purchase this MCS standard course as a standalone course option. The cost of that is £169. There is another very good option, which is the All Access membership. Okay, so the All Access membership includes this MCS standard course option, plus it includes all of our other CIMA standard courses. So from all the way from E1 at the operational level through to the strategic level. So you get the E1 standard course, the F1 standard course, P1, the OCS. Of course, that's not going to be very relevant for you guys, but it's the middle management level that really is very useful. You get the E2 course, the F2 course, the P2 course, the MCS, this particular MCS. So really, really useful if you want to go back and dive into theory that you're not quite comfortable yet before the MCS exam. And crucially, you also get access to the entire strategic level. So if you, and we expect you should be passing the MCS this February window, then you'd want to progress to the next level, which is take the E3 exam, the P3, the F3 exam. You get all of those courses and you get the SCS course as well. Now, you unlock all of that content for 12 months with the All Access membership, okay? And the usual price for this is £399, the All Access membership. We're going to put a sale on for the next 48 hours so that it's going to drop to £299. So we'll send out a link to unlock all of that content, All Access. As I said, you get all of these standard courses for 1 year, 12 months from this moment, from this point of purchase. $399 is the usual price. We're going to do it for $299 for the next 48 hours. Okay, so that's the All Access pass, giving you access to the MCS standard course and a whole lot more. Some students, though, like to go a little bit more in depth and get a very, very involved MCS course. And there is another option for that. It's called the MCS Elite course. Okay, so this is the most complete MCS course that we offer. This is not part of the All Access membership, okay? And it is more involved than the MCS standard course that you get included in that All Access membership. So I'll send this link out afterwards, which details all of the content that you get as part of the MCS Elite course. There are 48 hours of course content spread across videos, mock exams, etc., and workshops, which I'll talk you through now. So this is a very, very complete offering. It involves a lot of contact time with Paul. There is a private community where you would interact with Paul on an ongoing basis during this course. There are live workshops that you don't get as part of the standard course. The community option, where you're getting a lot of contact time with Paul, is also not part of the MCS standard course. It's only part of the MCS Elite course. You get marking as well of all 5 mock exams included as part of the Elite course. You don't get marking included as part of the MCS standard course. So all of those elements, those additional elements, the contact time with Paul, the live workshops, the marking, we hope results in elite performance. So we see this kind of course makes a big difference to students who want to do very well in the MCS exam. Paul is going to be your tutor throughout this course. He's an excellent tutor, and there's a lot of detail there on his credentials. And Paul will talk, I think, a little bit about his background just before the start of his session tonight. So if we get into the meat of the what's included in the syllabus for this course, it's everything that was included basically in the MCS standard course. So a lot of pre-recorded content here, recordings that go back on the E2, F2 and P2 theories, etc. You get all that pre-scene analysis, the industry analysis, etc. You get, the live webinars that I already mentioned, but you get all of this extra content. These live workshops with Paul are really, really crucial. So they're taking place pretty much every week. There's one. They're 2-hour, very interactive sessions. So a lot of question and answer. We intentionally keep the group size small for the elite course so that you have a lot of time to discuss things with Paul. So they're very, very exam focused. So Paul will lead you through, a detailed overview of the exam and how it's marked in that first workshop. In the second workshop, you debrief the first mock exam that you sit. So Paul would talk you through, why the model solutions were good, what more you might have done, what the examiner is looking for, etc., where you went wrong, where you went right, etc. So really, really useful. And the following week, you'll see there's another debrief session. So these workshops, these debrief sessions, they're 2 hours each, 2 hours each, very, very interactive, as I said, and they're not included in the MCS standard course. They're only part of the MCS elite course. And as I said, you're getting marking and feedback for every one of these mocks that you're sitting each week, okay? And that's not included in the standard course option. Okay, so they're the extra elements that you get as part of the elite course. So you get 5 mocks marked, you get 12 hours of workshop time with Paul, very interactive sessions, and you get to participate in a live, in a community with Paul where you're interacting with him on a near daily basis. So Paul will be sharing, useful articles and additional useful tips outside of these more formal sessions, okay? So the cost of the MCS Elite course, if you want to take it, is £599, okay? So we benchmark this kind of course against other tuition providers. We know it's quite a bit of money, but we also know that it is remarkably good value compared to what other tuition providers are offering for this kind of course. So typically we see these kinds of courses going for £800 to £1,500, okay? So this is £599 in total. So it's really very good value. The other thing, we recognize that, inflation for the last couple of years has become a concern for people. So we want to make it as easy as possible to pay for this course. And that's why we only require an initial deposit of £99 with the remaining £500 paid over 5 months, okay? So if you want to join this course, you pay £99 now, and then the remaining £500 is paid over 5 months. So next month you would pay £100, the following month £100, and so on until the £599 is paid, okay? So I'll send out these 2 links after. If you're interested in a course, both are good options, the standard course or the elite course. If you're looking to do really well in the exam, I would highly recommend the elite course. If you are a little bit more confident and comfortable, I think the all access option is excellent. There's a lot of value packed into that, and especially if you're planning on progressing through the strategic level in the next 12 months, that's a great option, okay? So I think that's about it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Paul, I need to make you host again.
Yes.
So there we go. You're host again.
Okay.
What I will do then, Paul, is I'm going to keep an eye on the chat in case there are any questions relating to the price of the courses or anything like that. So if you have any questions about the timetables or when different things are occurring, etc., you can send an email to info@vivatuition.com. So that's info@vivatuition.com, or you can pop a message into the chat box here or the Q&A, and I'll get back to you tonight. Paul is the guy to go to if you've got questions relating to the content, so the pre-scene or anything that he walks you through in the presentation tonight. Okay, so if it's more administrative stuff relating to the times of the different classes, etc., that would be for info@vivatuition.com or something I can handle in the chat box. Whereas the content of the course would be for Paul. Okay, so I hope all of that is clear enough. Paul, I'm gonna hand over to you. I think you're gonna walk through a PowerPoint or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically tonight is about, as the title suggests, a roadmap, a way through. And I think that, I know that you'll be going off screen now in a moment, Thomas, but I think the key point for students in this sort of journey towards success is to start well, to understand what you're up against. The phrase that I always like to use, Thomas, some students buy into it, some don't, is know your enemy. Yeah. Know your enemy. Now, whether or not you buy into the idea, no disrespect to CIMA, we've got to understand the exam, and we've got to have a set of steps. And really, that's what I lay out tonight, Thomas, a set of steps towards success. And in my opinion, it's a big statement, but I've seen it work. I've taught hundreds of students passed through this exam, is if you are a student, if you follow the steps that I outlined tonight exactly, I think you'll pass. Yeah, exactly. That means you do the mock exams, you get the mark, etc., etc. So you've got to follow the steps. That you can't leave an ingredient out, Thomas. And as you say, this exam is passable, but you've got to front up and you've got to follow the steps. So really, that's what I'll be doing tonight.
Wonderful. Excellent. It's a high value session, no doubt. Okay, so I'm going to get out of your hair, Paul. I'm going to go off screen. I'm going to mute my microphone, and well, I might mute my microphone until you've shared the PowerPoint. Maybe you want to just share that, and I'll let you know that I can see it.
Yeah, I'm just going to, I'll do a quick intro. Thanks for mentioning my hair, Thomas. I think what Thomas is doing,
I have less all the time as well, Paul.
He's trying to make, it's a veiled comment about the fact that there isn't much hair there. I'm going to share the PowerPoint deck. I'll just intro just for a few moments, just a couple of things I want to touch base on, and then we'll go in. We will break everybody about halfway through, reasonable amount of content to get through, and there will be a Q&A at the end. Yes. And I might ask a question or two during the session as well, and maybe you can chat. So that's the plan, Thomas.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, cheers. Okay, everybody, listen, thank you for joining Thomas and I tonight, and indeed this webinar, giving up your time to establish these steps in this journey through to success. I'm going to do everything that I can over the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks to make sure that you pass. And just very briefly, I mean, this webinar isn't about me, but you know, when I attend webinars, I always like to know, well, who are you? Why should I listen to you? A little bit of background on me. I've been teaching this particular exam and the other case studies for many, many years, since they were introduced February 15, okay? And I've come across hundreds and hundreds of students, and some resitters, prize winners, average students, et cetera, et cetera. So really, I've seen just about everything that a tutor or a lecturer can see in relation to this exam. And much of what I know now in terms of my expertise, I think, is based on what I've learned from students, what I've learned from prize winners, what I've learned from perhaps a multiple resitter in the MCS exam who gets through. So really, everything that I'll tell you tonight, based on the slides that you'll see and stuff that I'll add on, is really from the practical, personal experience of students like yourself who have all got through. Thomas made a great point there. This exam is really, really passable. So if you're sitting there, wherever you are in the world, thinking, God, I'm worried, am I going to be okay? You are absolutely, if you take on board everything that I say tonight. And also, if you're prepared for some hard work, okay? There's some mock exams to be done. You know, it's tough going. It's only 5 or 6 weeks, yeah? So, you know, if we combine those ingredients, you're going to get through, okay? Now, before I share the PowerPoint deck with you, our PowerPoint presentation for tonight, I just want to throw in a question. for the people in the audience. We've got a very, very sizable group tonight for this webinar, and thank you for attending. And my question to you is this. It's a little bit unusual, but I would really, really appreciate if anyone would chat through on the chat box and respond. My question is this. It's a trick question, by the way. I'm a bit like that. Is it possible for a resit MCS student on the next attempt to become an MCS prize winner? Now, I'll say the question again in case you didn't hear me or you didn't understand what I said. Is it possible for an MCS two-time resitter, to become a prize winner on the third attempt? I'm just wondering, what do you think? What do you think? Anyone prepared to chat through or put an answer through on the... So we've got, Tracy saying yes. I don't see why not. Okay, Adil, thank you. Thank you for these responses. Well, in fact, you're right. I mean, I sort of expected some people to say yes and maybe some people to say no. When I've asked that question before to different students, to different classes, there's been a reasonable number say, no, that's not possible. Now, the reason that I asked that question is this. I just want to briefly outline the circumstances of this student, the circumstances of Simon Jenkinson, a student that I taught, that very person, who had 2 resits on the MCS exam, then came to me, told me his story, was down in the dumps, and then on our attempt, he came joint first in Ireland. This is going back now, I would say 2018, early 2018, I think it was the February. So why do I say this? Why am I talking about some guy who you don't know who won a prize? So what? What does that mean to you? What it means is this. There's the wrong way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. Give me a regular person, an average student, if they do what I ask them to do, if you do what VIVA is asking you to do, you're going to get through. Whether or not you win a prize or not, I don't know. But there's so many things that we shouldn't be doing. And there's so many things that we should be doing. And we need to be clear on them tonight, because here's the starting point. And as I said to Thomas, tonight is about getting off on the right foot. Okay? So without further ado, I'm going to share the PowerPoint slides with you, take you through the content. In some areas of the slides, I'll dwell a little bit, slow down, and in some I'll speed up. I don't think I'll read every single line to you. I know that you can read yourselves. We will take a short break in the middle or thereabouts, and I will have time, don't worry, for Q&A at the end, okay? Maybe about 5-10 minutes. If we have to run over a bit, I'm perfectly fine. Don't worry about me at all. So store up your questions to the end, do pipe through if there's any sort of problem. And also, I think a good idea tonight, if you can, is maybe make some notes about things that resonate with you. Think, oh, that's unusual, or I like the idea of that, okay? A few notes based on this webinar would not do any harm at all, okay? So there's the Jen. Let me screen share with you and let's get cracking. Let's get this party started. 1 second. Okay, so bear with me 2 ticks when I do my slideshow. Okay. I'm hoping that you can see this okay. You can see slide number 1. So mastering the MCS case. Let's take a look at our agenda for tonight. What are the main areas that we are going to cover tonight? They are as follows. Key pre-scene information. Okay, so what we've done here is stripped out, cut out essential elements of the pre-scene. One of the biggest issues for students within this particular exam is certainly the idea that they are familiar with the company and indeed familiar with their role. Remember, you are an employee of this business. Think about it. If you're working right now, or even if you're not, if you worked previously, if this exam was about your employer, yeah, all the questions on the big day were about your individual, you'd find it a lot easier to answer them, wouldn't you? Because they'd be talking about expansion plans for your employer. They'd be talking about HR issues within your department, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing the key elements of the pre-scene is very important. Second point, theories. Now, we know that we have 3 subject areas, yeah, that are relevant. Now, a key point here for me, in my experience and based on my interaction with students, let's remember that in relation to the theories, across the board, across the 3 subjects, I would say the exam is reasonably nicely weighted across the 3, maybe a little bit of an emphasis on P2, but not a massive one, okay? So the bottom line is this. Let's remember that the MCS exam is not, I repeat, not a retest of the whole syllabus or syllabi that you've covered at the OT level. Yeah, it's not. It's certainly not. And that's a key mistake that students make. Oh, I sat P2 a year ago. I've forgotten everything. I'm going to have to go back to the study text. No, you're not. What we want to do is we want to learn key theory in the context of happy place. When we're talking about theory, when we're thinking about theory, we're always trying to tie it in to our case company, okay? More detail on that in a tick. An action plan. We talked about steps, yeah? There are a set of steps that you've got to take. And indeed, following this webinar, everybody, we have got to take action. Not on Sunday, not next Wednesday, now, today. Okay, we have plenty of time, but what we don't want to do is leave it a week or 2 and yeah, I might buy the elite course, I'll get the standard course, I'll come back at it, I'm not sure, you know, no. Now is the time to take action, yeah? We need 5 to 6 weeks. We need that period. So action steps start today, okay? Final point, our Q&A, and as mentioned, try and make a note if you can of any questions going forward. I am happy to run over tonight. I'll stay for another hour if you really want me to. Don't worry about it, okay? So store some questions up. And let's remember that certainly in my experience of teaching classes, I do mostly online now, well, I guess all online, but certainly either online or face-to-face. One of the keys to success I found when you have a group of students is if they interact, the results go up. So if I get students making an effort, say, well, what's this? What's that? I don't understand that. Or I don't agree with you. Or I think this, or I found out about this. Those are the classes that have the highest pass rates. Absolutely. So get involved. Yeah. Ask a question tonight for sure. Okay. So there's the agenda. Key pre-scene information. Now, I know that you will have the chance, given the fact that the pre-scene's been out for several months, perhaps some of you know it well. Maybe we've got some students who've been reading the pre-scene for 3 or 4 months, maybe didn't do the November exam. We know the results are out, I think, next Thursday. So if you're pending results or you're here because you're not sure, you know, this information is really about the bones of this company. So let's take a look at it. What do we know about this company? I guess the first thing is that it's a retailer, okay? So the bulk of its revenue, broadly speaking, is from retail outlets. Now, they are online too. So they've got bricks and mortar, yeah? Their retail stores, 120 of them, and on top of that, they use e-commerce. Situated in Wistaria, and note that all of their retail stores are within Wistaria. Wistarian dollar as the currency. So it was founded back in, well, 30 years ago, I guess, 1992, and is now quoted. Quick point on that, I'm just wondering, you know, when we see quoted companies, you know, we do think about CG or corporate governance, yeah? Now, quick note, corporate governance within the MCS exam, was certainly not within the syllabus. There is an element of corporate governance at the operational level. I don't expect any corporate governance topics. So really this idea of the company being quoted, it obviously is relevant to some areas of the management level syllabus, but not in the sense of corporate governance. Let's make a note, okay? Outside of that, you know, there's a fair degree of competition in this Westarian market, as we've seen from the pre-scene, a number of players, yeah? But certainly Happy Plays is one of two of the big boys in terms of the retailers retailing only toys, okay? What they do is they're very savvy, not just with their buying, yeah, but also with their pricing. And we know that they watch competitors' prices and try to match. They do have a pretty broad range of products to boot, basically three-pronged. We've got toys, we've got video games, and to a lesser extent, bicycles as well, okay? Next, operations. How do they operate? Well, the first key point is this area of sort of responsibility or responsibility centers, profit center, as opposed to the other options. Let's have a think now. What are the other options in terms of centers? We know that profit center simply means that there's responsibility for the difference between revenues and indeed costs. What would be the other options, I wonder? And indeed, could the examiner bring in a topic that perhaps looks to some sort of new part of the business that's maybe operated as a different type of center? Remember that there's two outside of profit. The managers themselves, they've got a fair degree of responsibility, albeit for the fact that most of the decisions for me appear to be sort of top down or handed to them. But certainly they're responsible for profit. They have assistant managers and a number of sales assistants. They also have targets and KPIs to meet, as shown for the briefing. Okay. Now, they have obviously, as an entity that is a retailer with 120 stores, they have a multitude of relationships with these retail parks. You know yourself, you've been to a retail park, and you'll know that, you know, regardless of the sort of brand, regardless of the reputation, there is a little bit of an issue, yeah, in this business model, which I see as basically, you know, great relationships with manufacturers buying their goods, yeah. I see excellent merchandising expertise, i.e. the idea that they present their goods, toys, bikes, etc., so well and have done for 30 years. You know, that's their key USP. And then outside of that, as we've said, they chose from the off retail parks. They chose to stay away from city centers. Now, as a result of that, you know yourself, one of the worst things that one can see is if you do go to a retail store and you see a number of shops, yeah, that are closed, yeah. So to some extent, you know, in certain stores or in certain parks, if you will, their success is dependent upon how successful that retail park is. Yeah. Forget Happy Place. You could be fantastic, but if the retail park is not doing well, there's an issue. Okay. Excuse me. They also, obviously, when we talk about the sideline online sales, non-bricks and mortar, they have a fulfillment center, and indeed they have couriers to boot who deliver goods out. Okay, so in one sense, you know, we see clearly from the pre-scene, and we'll see from the financials in a slide or two, that this is a very, very successful business based on retail. But you know what? When we think about real life toy industry, we wonder a little bit as to, you know, this focus on retail. And indeed, it gives us a feel for perhaps possible topic areas in the area of digital or digitalization, moving more online. We know that there is a big player within the Westarian market in the online area. So it's just sort of food for thought, you know, how long will this last? How long will retail stores be it? Okay. Let's move on to management. Now, who manages this business? Now, we see that there are basically 5 on either side. We noted that corporate governance even though we have listed status, it's not overly relevant, but as you'd expect for the listed company, they have a series of non-executive directors and indeed 5 executive directors, including the CEO. The founders no longer with the company, they sold their interest, and that was probably their plan from the off, I would suggest. Okay, a number of departments, as you would expect for a company operating retail and indeed operating online. Okay, let's move now into the business model. Now, this is an important area, and if I was sitting listening to myself right now, I'd certainly make a note of that phrase, business model, for 2 main reasons. The first one is that we know from the change in the CIMA syllabus, in November 2019, that was the last significant change in the CIMA syllabus. We know that this idea of value was brought in. So CIMA liked to change their syllabus from time to time, and they brought in several areas concerning this idea of value. And students, I remember at the time, was just scratching their head, talking about value. Well, we need to be talking about profit. Well, profit's not the same as value, And we'll see as we roll down this sort of 4-part diagram that talks about, creating value, delivering value. We'll see how Happy Plays does it. Now, this is an important slide. Now, in terms of the business model, we can look at it like this based on that value model, or indeed we can look at it as that sort of 3-pronged approach. You'll recall that I said, well, when I look at Happy Plays, I think to myself, why are they so successful? 3 things, The first is choosing retail parks, The second is excellent merchandising, And indeed, linked into the first, I guess, is the manufacturers and the buying department. The buying department are so savvy, and their relationships and their ability to get good prices is what drives this business. I mean, let's think about it. Happy Plays is really a middleman. That's all it is. But look at the revenues. They're a middleman between the customer and the manufacturer. They don't make anything. They're just very, very good at 2 main things: choosing retail parks and merchandising and buying. 3 things even. Okay, so let's look at this model. First thing, the value. What is this value that they give? Well, broadly speaking, it's the choice. It's the choice of some of the best toys, if not all of the best toys available on the market, with a smattering of other areas, video games, and indeed less so, bicycles. Okay. In terms of creating value, well, we've touched on it already. Their relationships with the manufacturers, as just mentioned, is crucial. If they had poor relationships with manufacturers, they wouldn't be here today. They can't do what they do without working that particular group of stakeholders and working in them well. Okay. Now, linked into that, not only do they choose well and indeed buy well at the right price, obviously there's other expertise that goes into them creating value, not least merchandising. Okay, let's think about merchandising. I have an excellent article that I'll share with you in relation to merchandising. It's just all about how we not so much get tricked into buying things when we walk. The number of times I've walked into a retail store, walked out with stuff, why did I buy that? I don't know. Well, it just looked nice. So this merchandising area is part of the key to their success for me. Outside of that, obviously the buying. Okay, so where do we go from defining and creating? Where do we go from there? Well, essentially they deliver value. Now, with particular reference there to this whole online side, and indeed the ability to get goods out, certainly online, within 48 hours. Excellent. Last point, capturing the value. Certainly the locations, it appears, are very, very good. There's a lot of them, not quite as many as Gleetel, their main competitor with 150, but there's 120 sites with staffed to the brim, offering excellent value, okay, and indeed customer service. Let's move on from here now. some other information. And as I say, I would encourage you here and there to be making notes, not just in this webinar, but also going forward. If you're not a student at the moment or a paid one, if you do join, I always think when your webinars, a few notes here and there helps you remember the content. A couple of nice pieces of information here. The first one to note is Gleatil, their main competitor. Now, they're the bigger player. Gleatil and indeed Happy Place combined control 25% of the market. I think it's 11% on Happy Place, 14% on Gleatil, or thereabouts. Okay, so 25% between the two. Now, there are other players, as we've seen from the pre-scene, the supermarkets, the online players, etc., etc. But Gleatil is the big retail competition. One thing to note, although they're bigger, not just in terms of the number of stores and indeed revenue, their financials are a little bit tricksy here and there, their margins and also their bottom line, okay, in comparison to Happy Place, okay? Now, this area of standards and indeed safety standards, in my review in September, we get the pre-scene 3 weeks before the student. So I actually had the pre-scene for MCS for Happy Place 3 weeks before everybody else did. All tutors do. And one of the big things that kept coming to me as I did my sort of research work, I was going online, finding out about the toy industry. I have 2 children, so, you know, I remember buying a lot of toys, unfortunately. I'm still paying for some of them, even though my kids are in their 20s now. You know, but one thing parents worry about is safety standards, yeah? And the H&S, health and safety, keep coming around in my mind. Remember, you know, a high proportion of users for toys are kids, young kids as well. Anything goes wrong, we have a major problem. So for me, that area of CIMA E2, health and safety, and indeed outside of the content of CIMA 2, the whole area of, you know, common sense. You know, what happens if we get a product recall? What happens if we get sued? You know, are we going to bring in, or we're going to think about IS-37? Yeah, we're going to think about CIMA E2 and health and safety. Are we going to think about our ethical position? So many different things link into that whole area of standards and or health and safety. And remember what I said from the off. You are an employee of this company. You'd know about these areas. You know, you're a finance manager. You'd know about IS-37, wouldn't you? You'd be able to write an answer. You know, you'd be able to decipher perhaps some unseen content. Let's move on. The responsibility here, this is an interesting one. You know, we've got, in effect, 3 main players here, haven't we? We've got the manufacturers, they manufacture, and a lot of them are abroad, overseas. We've got Happy Place in Wistaria, okay? And then we've got the customers in Wistaria. Remember that Happy Place only supplies via its retail stores and indeed online, I believe, in Wistaria, yeah? Now, who's responsible? That if the toys are made in Wistaria, then the manufacturer, okay? But the importer, i.e. Happy Place, if they're manufactured elsewhere. Let's make sure that we know that distinction, okay? Interesting point there about voluntarily conducting safety tests. As I say, this area is very, very important. I had a little stat for you there, something you might find of interest. So many pieces of information about this particular pre-scene. Give me 1 second. Yes. What was this? Yeah, it was about injuries. Yeah. I believe that the stat is this, and I'll tell you what I mean by a stat or an industry example and how we might use it in the exam in a moment. But I think that the stat is in 2021 in the United States, yeah, there were 200 instances or 200 situations where a child was brought into ER, emergency room, you know, as a result of a toy. In other words, basically injuries caused by toys, 200 in the US. I think that's quite a high number. Now, around about the 2007, 2008, I remember from this specific example, it was more like 300, 350. So it's got a bit better, but still 200 children injured by toys. That's a lot. And think about it, you know, as mentioned, when we delve into this whole idea of, okay, they're supplying stuff to our kids, this is Trixie Dixie. There's quite a few areas in the management level syllabus that ties into, as I've just mentioned. Okay. Just in terms of the, you know, using stats and real life stuff, a quick word on that. One big mistake that I have seen MCS students make in relation to this exam is to overplay the importance of the industry, to think that they need to become some ninja, some expert in the industry. We don't. I'm going to provide you with all the industry knowledge, the real life stuff that you need. If you never went on to Google in the next 6 weeks, yeah, fair enough. You can if you want, but let's not make it the cornerstone of your studies. I had a student several years ago, really nice guy. He was an Indian chap from London. And he came to me, he was recommended to me, and he had failed twice. Yeah. And the most recent sitting that he failed on was a February sitting, I'm nearly sure. And the pre-seen company for that February sitting was a dental chain. Yeah, a dental chain. Unusual, yeah. So when he came to me for the May exam, I said, what I normally say is, tell me how you approached the last paper and indeed the one before it. And he said, well, I knew the industry really well and the juices started working in my head because I'm always trying to ask fairly straightforward questions and I always try to keep my mouth shut. So I like to get the student to tell me all the list of things that they've done that I know are not good things because I see the results. I see a 2-time resitter. And what he said to me was this. He said, yeah, this dental chain, I knew the industry really well. And I said, how many mock exams did you do? He said, oh, no. I said, well, just give me an idea. And he went, well, I said, well, just an idea. None. Now, let's think about it. No mock exams, but an expert in the industry. Alarm bells are ringing. And here's the rub. What he also said to me, yeah, by the way, he passed on the 3rd attempt in March. What he also said to me is I made several appointments with my dentist. And I said, you're a dentist? What do you mean? He said, well, I wanted to go and speak to my dentist about the industry, yeah, and find out about the industry. And I said, well, realistically, do you think that spending an hour twice with your dentist helping them? He said, no, didn't. Okay. Now, I don't see that. I don't mention that story to be disparaging on this guy because he passed. He's a really nice chap and very bright too. It's just an example that I hope will stick with you about overplaying the industry. We don't do that. I have the information that you need about the industry. Okay. Trust me on this. Let's move on. What's the finances like for this company? Well, I've mentioned that they're successful. Where's the juice? Well, the juice here, most recent financial year, increase in revenues, 6.5. That's pretty reasonable to me. And note, it's certainly more than Gleetail. Now, Gleetail's increase year on year, I think, is 0.11%, not even a percent. Okay. So certainly on the financial side, let's make sure that we know the difference between the financials, the revenues, increase in revenues, the gearing, etc. You know, it appears that Happy Place are growing bigger than its larger competitor. What else do we pick up? Profits at 123 Westarian dollars, big increase, bigger than the increase in revenue. They are doing well. Operating profit margins, not a significant uplift in the year, between 12 and 13.6. Note Gleetail's declined, and indeed after tax, PAT 77.1, which in effect is similar increase in relation to operating profits. Okay, so very, very successful. DPR or dividend payout ratio, virtually the whole shebang. So obviously quite demanding shareholders, don't you think? Yeah, they want some money back and they're getting their money back. That is a sizable amount to be paying out, and indeed a massive percentage too. Okay, some ratios. The margins year on year, no big change there at all. okay? Improving position, but nothing to write home about, okay? In terms of the operating profit margin, similar story, 12% in 2020, 13.6. Again, for me, no massive change there, but certainly improving. I'm glad that it is improving. So let's move the camera. The net profit margins, 7.6% in 2020, 8.5. Again, not a significant difference for me, but certainly improving. In terms of the cash conversion, 1 to 3 days. Let's remember that this is a retailer. To be honest with you, I'm not overly concerned about cash conversion at all. One thing I would be concerned about, and I'm always interested in relation to the MCS exam, is how they're financed in this area, gearing, okay? Now, quick flag here. We'll see this later on in the slide deck. Sources of finance are a popular topic for your examiner, okay? And indeed, over and above that, ratio of financial analysis, another, probably not as popular as sources of finance, but certainly a topic that could be examined. Let's remember that when we look at, we see the gearing here around about 50%, not much change year on year, fairly sizable, but for a retailer, I would have thought that you would have that. Now, my point was this. In terms of the financial analysis, we have to be savvy with the numbers that you've seen on screen. I'm talking about rote learning, okay? I'm talking about being able to quote these numbers if I need to, okay? But is there going to be a question, a direct question in the unseen material on the day that says, please provide a ratio analysis for happy place? No, there is not. Absolutely. This is too easy. It's not happening. The way in which ratio analysis would be examined is by, I would say, the provision of new numbers for possibly another entity or entities, and the examiner targeting your knowledge. Are you able to look at fresh numbers and analyze them? Or perhaps there's an opportunity for expansion, and these are the projected numbers for happy place. What difference is that in relation to existing numbers? So what am I saying? I'm saying, number one, we've got to be all over the financials like a rash. Yeah, like a rash. We must know the revenue for last year. We must know the uplift of 6.5%. We must know that Gleetil basically didn't have any uplift in revenues. We must know the gross profit. This is basic memory, okay? We've been memorizing stuff since we were knee-high to a grasshopper in kindergarten. There's no excuse for arriving on the day, not being able to immediately quote the gross profit margin or immediately say, what's the revenue for this year? There's no excuse for it, people, okay? So let's move on. We will take a break in a tick, don't worry. Some scenarios. Now, a word of caution here. We've come up with some possible scenarios in the exam, okay? Now, other tuition companies do this, as you would expect. Your students looking for help and advice and support. We've got to give you an idea, within the mock exams themselves, but also outside of the mock exams. We're limited to 5 mock exams, so that's a lot of mock exams. I'll be talking about other possible areas tonight and at other times. But, there's one thing that I've seen students do, MCS students, that I think is a little bit of a mistake, and I hope that I can make it clear to you tonight what exactly I mean, is hoping for topics. And when they don't come up on the day, being disappointed, and it gets them off track in the exam. Of course, we can have a hit list, and we're going to have a hit list as part of our armory, as part of our ammunition. But the bottom line is this: our biggest sort of weapon on the day is our ability, having practiced 5 mock exams and hopefully, if you join the elite course, having them marked, is to deal with any question. That's the ace up our sleeve. Not so much, God, I hope this comes up. I hope that comes up. Or Paul said investment appraisal is a really hot topic, but it's not in this exam. What am I going to do? Of course, we can practice and talk and we can do it. But, anyone, a tutor, a student, your mom, your dad says, I know what's coming up on the day, me included, is a crazy person. Nobody knows what's coming up on the day. And the MCS examiner, note, has a habit, not a habit, a bleeding pattern, of making requirements quite vague. And often I get the feedback from students in the exam, students that pass, who say, I've read several of the requirements. I'm thinking, where is that in the management level syllabus? Where's the subject content? How does E2, P2, or F2 tie into those requirements? And I said, well, listen, it does in a broad way, yeah, but this exam is not just about you regurgitating information from the study text. It's not just like an OT paper where if you memorize loads of stuff, you can get your 70%. It's about skills. This exam is about displaying, as you would in real life, in the office, skills, communication, yeah, professionalism, timekeeping, discipline, analytical skills, et cetera, et cetera. And do remember that when we're doing the mock exams, we're practicing those skills. If we're not doing mock exams and getting the mark, we're not practicing those skills. Do you have them already? Maybe you do. But in my experience, students need those 5 mock exams to hone those skills, to get better at doing what they're going to have to do on the day. One final point here before we look at the potential scenarios, with caution, obviously, is let's remember that when we look at the post-exam guides, and I will encourage you to do this, more of that in later webinars, the biggest complaint of the MCS examiner, if you look at all the post-exam guides since February 2015, when the examiner was first examined, is this, drum roll: students do not answer the question that they have been asked. One more time. Students do not answer the question that they have been asked. They answer the question that they wanted to see, or something that they had studied for, or they saw a phrase in the requirement and they regurgitated, knowledge dumped everything about that topic, rather than answering the question they've been asked. We've got to stick to that. More of that as we go through the course. Okay, some scenarios. A new store creation. A couple of options there, perhaps digital first, yeah? In other words, focusing on the online e-commerce side, or maybe some sort of flagship store with a tie-in from a film company or a film that people are raving about, okay? What would we need there? Well, we might need some finance, yeah? We might need some sources of finance, This might affect the financials. We might need to borrow some money, okay? Upgrades to the store. What if we decided, rather than just offering retail, that we have cafes or restaurants? How does that affect us? Is this a good idea? Do we have core competence in running cafes? What would it involve? How much would it cost? Would we have to get new staff in? Do we need new managers? Et cetera, et cetera. We need to get the juices flowing. I'm not saying, potential scenarios are a waste of our time. I'm saying, yeah, we should be thinking about them, but we should be thinking about them in the context of the 3 subjects. Okay, safety. For me, I would say out of the first 3 here, this topic, I like this topic. I can't promise anything, but I like this whole area of the idea of recall and the potential impact of that on the company reputation, IS 37, provisions, contingent liabilities and assets, some sort of claim, a class action against them, ethical responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, we're talking about our kids here, okay? Store expansion. Let me just move the camera, bear with me 1 second. Store expansion. Clearly it's plan A, I would have thought. But I think outside of that, we know that they're Westarian-based only. We know that they have a very, very good business model, although we're a little bit worried about how long retail outlets are going to go on for. Why couldn't they just replicate outside of Wistaria in a neighboring country? And indeed, what problems would that bring? Well, again, we're back to, is it finance related? Is it cultural? What do they need to be thinking about to expand further, i.e. within Wistaria, or indeed in a neighboring country? Okay, so those are just some ideas. I'll certainly throughout the course be talking about many, many more. We need, before exam day, to have our hit list of topics that we're thinking about. And it's always nice, I think, in exam, I remember this for myself, if I did have a hit list and something came up, made me feel good in the exam. Can't guarantee anything, but it makes me feel good. And confidence in exams is important. If we can find ways within the real exam to make us ourselves feel better, this is a good idea. The reverse is also true. Okay. Now, let me just check the time here. Second. I'm on 3 or 2. Okay. What we'll do now is let's take just a quick break. Okay. I'm just going to take a quick break. No more than 5 minutes. I want to give you a break. I want to give me a little break. Remember that I'm not necessarily sticking to time unless you want me to. So if we take 5 minutes now, if you could come back in 5 and be ready for action, then I'll get you through the balance of the slides. Only a few more to go, and then we'll have our Q&A, and then we'll be done for the evening. So listen, firstly, thank you for listening so far. I'm hoping that you've been thinking about questions. I see that we've got a lot of action on the chat. I'm looking forward to the questions, by the way, and I'll certainly try to come up with a sensible answer for you. Okay, so listen, let's take 5, and then we'll go from there. Okay, cheers. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay there. I got waylaid by the management because it's 3 o'clock in the morning around the corner. So my apologies. I hope you had a little break there. Let's push on there and get through the balance of the slides. I hope that everything so far has made sense. And do note that, you know, in terms of what Thomas laid out in future webinars, certainly, you know, we have a lot of content to sort of provide to you in the form of mind maps, in the form of PowerPoints. But you know what? I do try always to add in a little bit of extra stuff here and there. And really, you know, my big thing about, you know, if I was sitting in the audience now and I was to say, I was to want to know, well, yeah, okay, so this is all right, yeah, but what's the key? What is the key to passing this exam, Paul? Because I need to pass it, and I want to pass it, and I want to get through and get qualified. What's the key? You know what I would say, and something that you may not expect me to say? I'd say that the key to passing the MCS exam is exam technique. Yeah, exam technique. And that's one of the things that I will talk about a lot in virtually every class. For me, that's the key to success in all exams, technique. You don't have to be an expert in the 3 subjects. You may have failed P2 twice or E2 once, whatever. Yeah, exam technique is where it's at. More of that throughout the other webinars for sure. Okay, so theories. What are the key theories that would tie in well? Okay, now let's remember that, you know, in terms of applying P2, E2, and F2 to the happy place pre-scene, or indeed to any pre-scene, let's remember that the content of the syllabi generally have areas that work well with a case study exam and areas that don't. Okay, so some of what you'll see on screen are the sorts of areas that tend to work well. We know that there's no number crunching in the exam. You don't sort of have to do loads of calculations. That's in the OT papers. So they have to sort of favor topics that are reasonably theory-based, yeah, that allow for written questions. Okay, so let's look at a few of them. I won't dwell on each one. The lead paper for the MCS, as I touched on earlier, here's some ideas. Investment appraisal. Now, if I was to pick the topic, yeah, for P2, that if a student is extremely weak on, we have a problem, Houston. Yeah, it's this one. You cannot walk into that exam, or indeed go online and open up that exam without being savvy with the key investment appraisal techniques. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean, you know, OT knowledge? No, it doesn't. What that means is, what is the technique? How does it work? What are the assumptions? And are there any advantages and disadvantages of every single technique? Okay, more of that as we move forward. Okay, pricing. Now, why is this relevant to Happy Plays? It's obvious. Their pricing, yeah, the way that they price has kept them in business and made them one of the market leaders in retail. Yeah, they know pricing. Now, let's relate it back into P2. There's a multitude, isn't there? 7, 8, 9, or thereabouts pricing methods, you know, or pricing options. We have to be savvy with each of them. Very easily examined. This tie-in, this is one of the areas that tie specifically into this type of company more than others. Okay, risk and uncertainty, yeah, relevant to any company. Let's make sure that we know the difference between the two, and of course, how we deal with risk. Let's think about that two-pronged side, you know, probability, likelihood, and impact, and indeed TARA, you'll recall. Quality management, yeah, always a popular topic. That topic, obviously, you'll pick up from, I guess, the operational level series exam, and indeed the OCS as well. You know, what do we mean by quality? What does quality mean for Happy Plays? Well, it means fit for purpose. Yeah, it means that your product, your toy, your bike, your video game satisfies that customer. And this whole area of, you know, TQM is important because we know that there are a number of, case study friendly topics in there for sure. I'm thinking of things like Kaizen, for example, continuous improvement, et cetera, and indeed a tie into costing as well. Okay, transfer pricing, another one, cost management, target costing, a very simple topic that I see students, when this is examined in mock exams, I see students not able to deal with target costing, and I wonder to myself, is there much to target costing, really? These areas, this is cheap marks, everyone. We've got to be savvy and have a reasonable grasp of as many topics as possible, particularly the more straightforward ones like target costing, and be ready for a question in that area. Responsibility centers, I've mentioned. Remember that all of the stores, sorry for the noise, by the way, all of the stores, profit centers, but there are two other types of responsibility centers, but I've forgotten what they are. I'm wondering, do you know? Okay. F2, okay? Now, if we have on the group today any gateway students, yeah, any gateway students, so students coming in off an MSc in finance or an MBA, listen up here, because there's some important information. If you're coming on a straight route through from the OCS exam, certainly listen up as well. But the Achilles heel for gateway students, yeah, is F2, okay? Why is that? Well, standards, okay? If you are a gateway student, the standards, the accounting standards are your nemesis. And if you're a student who's come up through the ranks through the OCS exam, and maybe you have some difficulties with F2, maybe you're not a sort of a financial type person, you're not keen or savvy with standards, we've got to be. So, what sort of standards? Well, a variety of them, a variety of standards, all of the standards. Now, let's be clear here. When I say we have got to be savvy with these standards, am I saying that, a student needs to be an expert at 37 provisions, continued line design? Am I saying that you need to know it? But no, I am not. What I am saying is, with all of the standards, this goes particularly for gateway students, we've got to know the definitions, we've got to know any conditions, we've got to know disclosure requirements, and we've got to know the basic mechanics of the accounting. Yeah. Now, I would say an average student, even if they were totally anti-F2, could probably look at IS 37. Let's say that they did F2 6 months ago. Let's say it's a gateway student who's never done it. You could get the bones, yeah, of IS 37 down on a piece of paper in probably about 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah. You could rote learn it over the next 30. I'm talking an hour. You could even be looking at, IS 38 and intangibles and thinking, I don't actually 100% understand this, to be honest, but I rote learned it. And if it comes up, then I can cobble together a passing answer. So listen, if you have issues in any of the subjects, let's say it's F2, let's say it's P2, whatever, don't think that you need to become some sort of expert to pass this exam, because you don't. Now, don't take it from me. I'm telling you what I've experienced with other students. I've seen gateway students come in. I say, listen, standards, please, get on it. They did, they passed. I've seen other students, P2 resetters. I said, listen, investment appraisal, we have to be on these, everything, all of the areas that they do it, they pass. So, don't get stressy about stuff. Just let's understand what we need to do and let's just do it. Right-hand side there, consolidations, okay? Consolidations is a very MCS friendly topic. The examiner, your examiner, likes consolidations. Again, I'm talking about defining what is a subsidiary, what is a joint venture, what is an associate. We've got to be savvy with the basics, not at OT level, but we need to be able to write about this stuff. Sources of finance I've already mentioned. This is, if there's ever chief marks on this page, on this slide, there it is. There's nothing to sources of finance. There's only 2 or 3 of them, yeah? We need to know what they are, what it's involved. We need to be able to tie it in to the pre-seen information. Integrated reporting, another topic that in my experience when it's examined in a mock exam, I used to do a lot of mock marking. I don't now, but I used to mark hundreds of MCS scripts, and marking's tough going, but you know, it's essential. Integrated reporting questions not well dealt with. Yeah, what are the 6 capitals, or how do the 6 capitals apply to this company? The student might get 2 of the capitals. I mean, that's a rote learning exercise. There's no excuse for us arriving on the day of the exam not being able to quote the 6 capitals. Yeah, I'm not saying being an expert in it, but not being able to quote them, or not being able to define what integrated reporting actually is. I mean, there's nothing much to integrated reporting. What does it mean? It means additional reporting. It means adding more information, more pages to our annual report to explain what we are doing across all of these 6 areas, and indeed what we're doing going forward. So it's really a shout out to this idea that when we think of corporate reporting, historically, traditional stuff, we think of the P&L and the balance sheet, we think it's not good enough. It doesn't give us enough information. Some people aren't, you know, financially savvy. They can't read a balance sheet. They can't read a profit and loss account. We need more. That's integrated reporting. That's it. You know, adios, vamos muchachos. Okay, you know, the basics we've got to know. Expertise, forget that. We don't need expertise to pass this exam. Okay, E2, again, a big time area, obviously, as being one of the subjects. I certainly think that, you know, E2 is up there with F2 in terms of importance. The good thing about E2 topics is I think that they're easier to write because some of them, common sense will help us, okay? The project management side, as you would expect, that's a significant part of the E2 syllabus. We need to be savvy with the main areas, okay? And indeed the tools. We certainly need to be savvy with business models for obviously a reason. Now, here's an important point here. Digital disruption. Going back to my point about the change in the syllabus, November 2019, the CIMA syllabus changed, okay? What did they do? They brought in a big emphasis, as you may be aware, on the whole idea of digital disruption and the sorts of things that are disrupting businesses. That is an examinable topic. We've got to make sure that we get into our E2 content and be savvy with what the cloud is, be savvy with 3D printing, be savvy with IoT. What do these words mean? And what do they mean in the context of a toy retailer? Okay, so notice we're already in the sway of thinking, yeah, okay, this area would work. How would it work? Okay, outside of that, negotiation. If I had to pick, you know, 5, let's say, E2 topics that have come up over and over again, negotiations in there for me, definitely. And there's nothing to negotiation, really, is there? There's the stages of negotiation, 4 of them. There's successful negotiators. What do they do? And indeed, what would their approach be? That's it in negotiation. This is, again, some cheap marks. Communication, again, a big area, commonly examined. I'd probably add to that right-hand side there, that whole area of leadership theories. Let's be familiar with the different types, you know, Tannenbaum-Schmidt, Likert, et cetera, and indeed, just a little flag, yeah? In my list of top 5, these are top 5 E2 topics. These are our building blocks. Negotiations in there, definitely. Conflict is in there. Conflict management. Let's not forget Thomas Kilmann, yeah, and the conflict management model, you know, that diagram, 5 parts, okay, 1 in the middle, 4 on the outside, okay. Right, let's move on. An action plan. Now, you remember that at the start of the webinar, I touched base, and indeed Thomas mentioned it, about taking steps, you know, taking action. I encourage you, and I'll say it again, we've got to do something today, you know, within 24 hours, you know, and there's a number of things that we would suggest you do, okay? First things first, you know, the exam itself. Now, I've touched a little bit on it tonight in terms of how the exam works. Sorry, we have a cat joining the webinar. Thank you. Outside of the basic mechanics, as mentioned, we've got to understand, for you, for your colleagues, for all MCS users, what makes a passing script? What is it that we need to prove to the examiner, yeah, to get us over the line, okay? And what I think is the main thing is skills, yeah? In other words, the idea that this budding finance manager has that prerequisite level of skills. That's what they're testing in this exam. I don't think it's a test of content purely of the three subjects. I think it's a test firstly of skills, then content, not in reverse. Okay. Certainly the knowledge of the syllabus, we've touched on possible topics. You know, it says excellent knowledge of the syllabus. Would I agree with that? I mean, I'm not so sure. I think a solid knowledge of as many areas as possible, yeah, with no significant area missed out. A danger that I've seen, or a trap that I've seen students fall into is, let's just say that you've got a student that doesn't like P2, maybe they've had some mishaps, maybe a reset or two or whatever. Maybe they shy away from that. We can't do that. Because for me, broadly speaking, although P2 is in pole position, it's broadly split a third in terms of what they'll examine. So you can't leave stones unturned, yeah? You've got to have a feel for the main areas of each of the three syllabi, okay? Exam technique, as I've said, for me, point number one, okay? The pre-scene, you know, here's where we come in, not least with this webinar, but going forward as well. You know, I'll be talking about different areas of the pre-scene. I'll be popping in with questions, asking you, oh, what about that? I might even be pleading dumb on occasion. I've forgotten. Can anyone tell me what is the deal about that? You know, we've got to be savvy. Do remember that you work for this company. This is an employer. Yeah, this is your employer. You mean you don't know what your employer's revenue was, and you're in the finance team? You're a finance manager. You don't know what the gearing percentage is? Seriously? Are you sure you work for this company? You get my drift, okay? Outside of that, you know, time management, you know, this links into what I've said about skills. If you abuse time in the MCS exam, I think you have a very good chance of failing the exam. Timekeeping is linked to discipline. These are great skills. These are skills that are being tested in this exam. Let's forget the content, forget the pre-scene, yeah? Time management. Let's prove that you can manage time between questions. You've got to be able to do it. Last point, commitment. You know, commitment means a lot of things for me. You know, I think it's so important from this starting point that you trust in the methods that we'll employ. You trust in us as tutors and lecturers and as a company, but that you believe that you can pass and that you commit yourself to passing. What you can't do from now on, from today, is say, yeah, okay, well, that was all right, but I'm not sure if I'm good enough to pass. You can't think like this. Yeah, I mean, you know, the bottom line is that if you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else? Yeah, you've got to say to yourself, okay, VIVA are laying out a set of steps. They said, if I follow those steps, I'm going to pass. I trust in them. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to do the mocks. I'm going to do them on time. Perhaps I'm going to get the mark if I can afford the elite course. If I can't, then I'll get someone else to look at them. Okay? You know, you've got to commit to success. Remember, success is not going to come and sit on your lap. You have to go to success. How do you do that? By taking action, not by sitting back and thinking and getting stressed and getting worried. Take action, okay? Outside of that, obviously, in terms of your plan, your weekly plan, everybody's different. You know, you need to book the exam. One mistake, I think, this avoidance tactic that I've seen where students say, yeah, I'm going to book it. I may book it. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it. Let's book the exam. Let's book it right. Let's commit to the exam right now. If you've got the time, if you have the resources, you have the money for the course and indeed the exam, do it. Get the exam. Let's get that date booked in, okay? The pre-scene document, obviously, as I've said, theory, we know, we've already discussed a couple of little areas we think these might work well, okay? Are we guaranteed for them to appear in your environment? No, we're not, but at least we're thinking like an employee, okay? The mock exams. This is a key point. I'll be mentioning this as we go through other webinars down the line. If you avoid mock exams, yeah, in other words, avoid doing them under full exam conditions, and or you avoid having them marked, we have a major problem, okay? That's point number one. More of that in future webinars. Practice questions. The post-exam guides are a very useful resource for you, i.e. the kits that CIMA release with all the variants from previous pre-scenes. We need to make them part of our studies, i.e. we need to be doing questions based on what's examined before. More of that throughout the course. That's a key resource. Do not ignore the post-exam guides, okay? Next point is that when we use post-exam guides, when we do practice questions, when we do mock exams, what happens? Well, quite often with the mock exams, possibly all of the mock exams, yeah, we fail. Great. I am happy. Your MCS student is happy that you failed all the mock exams. Why am I happy? Because I know that if you sit them under full exam conditions, fail them, I know you're going to learn from that experience and or from your marker. You know, the key to success in anything, in my experience, I'm in my late 50s now, the key to success is practicing, is failing. In effect, what I'm saying is, as an MCS student sitting on this first webinar now, you must fail to succeed. And the problem is that we, me, you, I don't like to fail. I don't want bad news. Well, unfortunately here, there's no way out. You know, if you pass all the mock exams, I'm happy for you. But if you fail them, I'm probably even happier. I really am, because I know that that is the key to success. How do I know? Because I've seen it. I've seen the students say, Paul, I did the mock exam, nightmare. I said, good, okay. He said, but I'm going to fail. It doesn't matter. And they keep, you know, putting their dukes up and say, okay, I'll do mock 2, but Paul, you know I'm going to fail. I said, cool, I'm fine with you failing, as long as we get through the model solution and basically understand where we went wrong. It flushes out, this failing flushes out. Key theory, we know key theory is up there. We know that E2, P2, and F2, there are topic areas. How important they are they more important than exam technique? No. Can we learn theory through the mock exams? Yes, we can, okay? Practice is everything, as I've said. If we don't practice, I think we're going to have an issue. Mocks will highlight the weaknesses, indeed, and indeed failure will too, okay? So in closing, we certainly have an exam here, as I said, from minute 1 of this webinar that you can pass. And trust me on this, you can pass it. Absolutely. You know, planning is important. Indeed, planning, not just let's book the exam, but also planning the mock exams. You know, let's just say that we have a student that is going to get the elite course option, and it's up to you what you do. It's your budget, it's your money. But let's just say the student was going to get the MART, you know, prior to those walkthroughs, either mock exam walkthroughs 1, 2, 3, they're on Saturdays. It's ideal if you've already done the mock, okay, not after the walkthrough. If you think about it, we come to mock 1, you attend the webinar, you hear about the mock, I walk you through the solution, and then you do it, it loses something. So we've got to get jiggy. Let's get the mock exams planned in date-wise, okay, ASAP, okay. Revising the syllabus, I've mentioned that already. The practice questions, obviously important. And indeed, the review of anything they do. The review of your failing mock exam, your failing question, absolutely key. Finally, good luck, okay? So there we are. Let me come off screen. Quite a few chat messages. I hope I'll be able to get through them. I think what I'll do is, let me just get this off. Yeah, okay. I think what I'll do is I will start by looking at some of the chat questions, and then I'll take more and see if I can get through them fairly quickly. It's now 3:32 from me. Oh, all access and link. Gerald, that's a question, as you may recall from the early part of this webinar, an admin question that Thomas wants directed to him. Yeah, so I have a good feel for the two, but I think I should stick with what the boss says. Yeah, and if you email info at, you'll get a good answer. Okay, so I know, and both courses are great. Yeah, but obviously there's a price difference. Both courses are great. Okay. So let me see how much of this chat stuff that I can actually get through. Okay. Okay. So it looks like Thomas has been answering some. Okay, cool. That's great. Okay, so there's a lot of yeah. Okay, so it looks like Thomas has been helping me out here as he said he would. Okay. So there's a question here about the digital side. Yeah, let me just deal with that one. Let's get that first one out of the way. 1 second, please. Apology. Brief explanation, Mohammed. Brief explanation of the digital disruption in the context of the MCS. Well, essentially, I've sort of touched on it. I'm not sure if you were referring to what I said, excuse me, about digital disruption, Mohammed, or if you're asking me in relation to the particular context of Happy Place and where Happy Place finds itself. Let's deal with the former. I mean, an easy way to deal with this, Mohammed, is to take a good look at this section of CIMA E2. And we understand and we know what disruption means for businesses. I mean, you know, most businesses that we use regularly have been disrupted in one way, shape, or form by the internet and or indeed something else. So in essence, all that we're saying is, Mohammed, something that completely changes the way that business is done or turns things on its head. A simple example is e-commerce. Okay, so I guess what we're talking about in relation to Happy Place is that in itself. What type of things would disrupt a business? A quick add-on here. When I think about disruption and I think about the toy industry, let's think back about what has disrupted the toy industry in the last 10 years. You may be familiar, excuse me, with a company called Toys R Us. Okay, now if you're not, Toys R Us was what you would call in the early noughties, so around about 2000, 2001, in the toy industry, this toy retailer, similar to Happy Place, was known as a category killer. Yeah, a category killer. Toys R Us was in virtually every retail park that I ever went into. And my children were born in 1998 and 2000. They'd drive me nuts about Toys R Us. I think I hated Toys R Us because they took all my money. Yeah. Now, the shoe is on the other foot now because Toys R Us does not exist now. It is gone. Bye-bye Toys R Us with all my money. Okay. Why? Why does the most successful toy retailer that there ever was quoted the category? Why is it gone? Two reasons. The first reason, yeah, is that it got disrupted out of the industry because it did not keep up with e-commerce and in the advent of online buying. Yeah, that's the first thing. And in addition, if you do your research on this, it's quite interesting, is that Toys R Us as a massive retailer tied in with Amazon. Yeah. Now, if there are any Toys R Us directors around and you mention the word Amazon to them, they will probably come at you with a baseball bat because Amazon had a lot to do with the demise of Toys R Us in several different ways, not least because obviously Amazon were providing products to consumers, toys to consumers, etc. But Amazon were a little bit sneaky. Yeah. Amazon were a little bit sneaky. There was a deal done. There was a contractual arrangement. There were court cases, etc. Let's do some research on that. So there's an example, Mohammed, of digital disruption. And it's as simple as Toys R Us did not get their act together quickly enough in relation to how the industry was being disrupted. People were buying more and more toys online. Okay. So I hope that helps, Mohammed. I'm going to see if I can find anything else. There was a question here that was an interesting one. Where is it now? Bear with me. There's so many different chat areas. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so this one here is from an individual called Abigail. Abigail, good evening to you. You were saying you're a gateway student learning content 2 months ago. What are your top tips to pass besides emphasis on F2? Okay, so my top tips to pass besides emphasis on F2 are F2, Abigail. And my third one would be F2 again. Now, I'm not trying to be funny, yeah? What I'm saying, Abigail, is that is the big one. That's the killer, yeah? We not only have to be savvy with the content, you say that you've been reviewing content, you've got to start writing out questions, preferably, Abigail, based on past pre-scenes. Start with F2 past papers or past 2 requirements. And literally, Abigail, write them out, yeah? Answer the question. Now, with non-gateway students and with gateway students, they always say, Abigail, to me this when I talk about the post-exam guides. They say, but Paul, it's a different pre-scene. So when I read the requirement, it's talking about some dental chain or it's talking about this. Listen, don't be worried about being perfect or precise. You don't be worried about the fact that you look at a question and it mentions something that's got nothing to do with Happy Place. I'm not interested in that. Just answer the question as if it had been asked about Happy Place, and then do your best to decipher the answer and say, well, yeah, that would probably work, or no, I didn't make it these points. Okay, Abigail, I hope that makes sense. And I wasn't being flippant about F2. I can't say it enough that I've seen good quality students, bright MBAs, MSCs, who didn't take me seriously enough and didn't get through. Yeah. I mean, if there was another area that I would say, listen, you know, this is in second place, then obviously it's going to be anything within P2 that wasn't on your, wasn't in your master's. So typical things would probably be, you know, 1 or 2 areas I would say within investment appraisal. Yeah, you'll know yourself. I don't know what was in your master's, but you know, any areas where there isn't an overlap between what you've covered within your master's and indeed the P2 syllabus. But I'm more worried about F2, to be honest. I'm more aware. F2 is the biggie. Okay. Right. I'm looking down. I'm looking down now. More questions. Are there any past pre-scenes which are similar to Happy Plays with best of practice on? There is one, and I'm going to deal with that in one of the webinars. But you know, to be honest, you know, I think that any pre-scene, Sally Bloor, I think any pre-scene is good. If I was going to direct you, I'd take you back to a pre-scene for a company called Pryblocks, I'm pretty sure. So it's a sort of a Lego type company. I think we're talking either November, I think it was November 20, Sally. Yeah, Pryblocks, P-R-Y-B-L-O-X-X, Pryblocks. So similar-ish, they make these blocks, toys, okay? I hope that helps. I will be dealing with Pryblocks during the course, okay? Okay, Abigail, you're very welcome. Thank you for your question. Okay, YT, I haven't certainly seen them. Gateway students. Okay, so no calculations, YT, are required. No calculations particularly, or very minimal calculations, okay? And YT, take on my points about gateway students, please, okay? Oh, Fahim, is it achievable to pass the exam by starting using the topics in the slide you presented? Gateway student. Yes, it is. I think, you know, I don't know if you're already signed up for VIVA or not, Fahim, but for a gateway student, are you saying, well, if I just study the topics, will I be okay? I guess it depends on the student, but I always would encourage a gateway student to have a course, for sure, because yes, having exemptions is great for him. Yeah, I would never do an exam that I didn't have to do. If someone gave me an exemption, I'm happy days, like Christmas time for me. But it comes with a kick in the tail. Yeah, so you need structure, you need guidance. So just be careful for him. Okay, yeah, 5 YT, 5 mock exams. Okay, Sally, you're welcome. YT, you're welcome too. Any other questions? I know that we're over time, my apologies, but I did say I'd run on. Maybe if you have typed a question in and I haven't seen it, you could copy and paste it if you like, everybody. I'm going to take a look at the Q&A. Let me see, Q&A. Okay, so Ivana, Ivana, your question, Ivana, sorry that I haven't come to the Q&A yet. I'm waiting for the result next week of the event that I failed. Of course, you remember I'm on the FLP program in the UK. Well, I mean, first things first, Ivana, we don't know what your result is. You may have passed. Either of the courses are good. I guess it depends on budget, Ivana. I think either of the courses are good, and we'd welcome you on any course. Okay, you're on the FLP program, which effectively means that you will have gone through all these sort of the hoops and the assessments within the FLP, which is great. But I do think a course on top of the FLP is a good idea, in my experience of dealing with FLP students. Okay, I hope that helps, Ivana. And listen, good luck for results. Fahim, you're asking the session on demand. Yes, it is. It'll be recorded. Sarah Kelly, you're asking about a printout of the slides. I don't think that we do printouts of the slides as such. I've only done one sitting or one quarter with VIVA. I'm not aware that printouts of the slides are available. I'm not aware of that, Sally. Okay. Right. Ivana, thank you so much. Satish, comment, thanks for the well-presented course. Enjoyed it, appreciate the motivation as well. You're very welcome, Satish. That's what we're here for. We're here to provide you with motivation. Francis, thank you. First exam, any sessions apart from the back? Juan, this is my situation, my first exam. Okay, Juan, you're saying that's a fairly broad question. You're asking me for suggestions. Well, number 1, hard work, and number 2, mindset. Yeah, determination, commitment, those 2 things. Those are my suggestions. YT, you're welcome. Okay, we've got one more thing. I will be letting you go. Sarah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad you found it helpful. Remember that, Sarah, remember what I said about, what I tend to say in the webinars is from students. I learned a lot of what I know, and I'm an expert in this exam for sure, but I learned how to be an expert from students. And you know what? I would say, to be honest with you, I probably learned most from resitters. Most of what I know from resitters. I learned quite a bit from prize winners. I've taught quite a few prize winners, but I learned most of what I know from resitters, what they did, how they did it, their mindset, their approach, their motivation, etc., from resitters. Okay, Jordan Jonathan, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed tonight. I'm so sorry for keeping everyone late. I don't like to be late, but I knew I was going to be from the start. So I thought I'd get myself out of it by saying, oh, listen, we can run on. We can run on. So that means if I'm late, you can't blame me. Okay. Yeah, Juan, it is important. Juan, yeah. Juan, as I said from the start, there's a set of steps that I've laid out. We follow them to the letter, including the mock exams. Yeah. And we are happy, Juan, to fail everything in the build-up. We don't care. It's called a mock. It's not the big day. But students, Juan, they're scared to fail. I was scared to fail mock exams. I dodged them. it didn't make any sense. I found out the hard way. Gemma, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm not sure what you're thanking me for, Gemma. Is it for the webinar or is it my silly joke? let me know. If it's the webinar, thank you. And you're very welcome. All of it. Okay, cool. Well, listen, come back for more. There's more. There's absolutely more. Okay, listen, other questions. Other questions. Thank you, Gemma. Other questions, everybody. What have we got? Any more questions? Anything else I can help you on? Preferably that's not admin related. I'm not an expert on all the admin. Enjoy this weather? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I am. For sure. Okay, Sophie is updated, so it's feeling more confident now. Good, Sophie, thank you. I'll see you in the community. I do post, not that it's not a sales pitch, but I do from time to time just post little tidbits on the elite forum, little things that I found here and there in relation to the industry. You know, are they essential for you to? Do you have to go on the lead course? No, but it's just interesting. I do find, certainly in terms of my learning about happy plays, and indeed from pre-scene to pre-scene, I dealt with every pre-scene since February 2015. I do find that either discussing something that I saw about the toy industry on a website or on the news, I do find that discussing it helps the student absorb the pre-scene more. Because we're talking about something like, for example, let me give you a couple. I've got a couple for you. You can make a note of these if you want, but these are ones that I was either going to mention during or now. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let's talk about CSR, corporate social responsibility and ethics. You know, do you know how many tons, of plastic that the toy industry produces worldwide, or will produce worldwide in 2023? How many tons? Now remember, most toys, a lot of toys are made from plastic. This is not good. 1 million tons. 1 million tons of plastic in 2023. Not good. And outside of that, who's going to do anything about this? Is anyone doing, are any of these toy companies, these retailers making all this money, are they doing anything about their damage to the planet, about sustainability? Well, I'll tell you the company that is, Mattel, M-A-T-T-E-L, one of the biggest players in the world, they have announced that by 2030, all of their products, all of their toys are going to be made from either recycled or recyclable or biodegradable product by 2030. So only in 7 years, okay? So again, these sorts of tidbits of information are important just to inform ourselves about what's happening out there. Another one, I like this one actually. We talked about pricing, and you remember that within the slides, I said, clearly, P2 and there's 7 or 8, I can't remember how many pricing options there are. There's too many for me to remember them. But we've got to be savvy on all of them. But let me tell you this, Hasbro, big player. You've heard of Hasbro, the toy maker. In 2003, they were fined, they're UK-based, I think, holding companies in the UK. 2003, they were fined £5 million, around about $7 million at the time, for price fixing, for fixing prices, for colluding, with other companies. Sorry, colluding with retailers. They're a manufacturer. They colluded with retailers in relation to the pricing, and they got found out. Now, what if, I don't know, Happy Place did that with Gleetail? What would happen? Now, remember that in relation to industry examples, we have a question here from Sally on real-life events. Remember, the examiner, the MCS examiner tells us, and CIMA tell us, that in all the case study exams, there is no need and indeed no additional marks for being an industry expert, okay? So why am I talking about this stuff? The reason is this. Number one, as I've just said, I think talking about it informs us more generally, gets you more into your role. We're all hanging out. We're all working for a toy retailer. We're all finance managers. We would have this little chit chat, wouldn't we? That's one side of it. But the other side is, I always think with a script, with an MCS script, if I see a student that's made a solid attempt and on occasion they stick in a line here and there that's relevant to the requirement, I like that. That differentiates that student from other students, showing a little bit of knowledge in the industry. So what I'm saying is this, in relation to Sally's point and my earlier point, is knowing some real life stuff, 20, 30 different little examples. It might be a stat, it might be Hasbro, it might be 1 million tons of plastic in 2023, and being able to slip it in, pepper your script here and there with a touch. And I'm not talking 2 paragraphs on Hasbro, yeah? I'm talking a touch, I'm talking a sentence or 2, yeah? If we get the right type of requirement, differentiate you. Will you get loads of extra marks? No, you won't, okay? But industry knowledge, for me, differentiates one student from the other, okay? So Sally, the answer to your question is yes, you can, yeah? Sentence or 2, YT, industry knowledge, in depth, not in depth. YT, not in depth, no? We get the right requirement. We get a requirement on corporate social responsibility. You know, there's a situation, what are the upsides for Happy Plays to pursue a more socially conscious strategy? Bang, bang, bang. Oh, and by the way, you know, XYZ company, real life company, did this last year. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I think we're nearly there, everybody, are we? I've kept you nearly 30 minutes over. I don't want to go over the 30 minutes because that would be shocking. But I think we're sort of good, yeah? I think we've had a good session. Well, I guess I have to say that. It's my job. I hope that you've had a good session. I hope that what I've said has made sense. I hope that you'll be joining us in one way, shape, or form. If you're not, please do. Sorry, it's late in the morning. I thought there was a burglar in the house. If you're not joining us, so be it. Good luck with your exams. If I could leave you with 1 or 2 final points in terms of your success, whether or not you join us or not, and I do hope to see you in the future. What I would say is a reiteration of really some of the points that I've made. I think the first one is this, is that this exam, in the main, and your passing of it, is based around displaying skills, not regurgitating content, okay? Point number 2, are the 3 subject areas irrelevant? Can you ignore E2, P2, and F2? Well, certainly you can't. But what should you do? We should be thinking about hot topics. We should be thinking about hit lists. If you're a gateway student, you've got to get in and be savvy with as savvy just about as students that come from the ground up, okay? The third point really is understanding the company, understanding the pre-scene, understanding the business model as sort of a strategic analysis. You've got to understand the business model and what makes this company work. Fourth and final point, and this is key. Even if you dealt with all first 3, okay, if you do not do the mock exams under full exam conditions, and if possible, subject to affordability, get them marked, yeah, we're in trouble. Absolutely, categorically across the board. You will never, ever, ever feel ready for a mock exam. Any student next week for mock exam 1 who contacts me and says, Paul, I'm ready for mock exam 1, I'm going to say, listen, let's bring a psychiatrist. Yeah, we need a psychiatrist for that student because what they're saying doesn't make any sense to me. And indeed, with the same student on mock 3, Paul, I'm ready for mock 3. No, you're not. No, you're not. You won't feel ready. But we're going to do them because we need to feel the pain, feel that experience, that pressure of, what do they mean by that? I got to put something down. I'm typing. There's smoke coming off my keyboard. Do not avoid the mock exams. If you avoid the mock exams, you're doing yourself a disservice. And, you know, I don't know what your experience is of dealing with successful people. I've dealt with a lot of successful people. I've met a lot of people in the middle, and people not so successful. But I don't meet too many successful people who dodge the pain. I haven't. They take the pain because they know that without that pain, they can't get to where they want to go. They can't get to their goals and their objectives. Okay. So I'll leave you on that note. Okay. I think I have one more chat in here. I'm going to say good night. What's the difference between 5 mock exams? Any special? One, I'm not sure what the question means. There's 5 mock exams. They're all different, all based on the pre-scene. I'm not sure what your question means, Juan. I'm not sure on that. Sorry. How do I see the elite classes on my account, please? Sophie, that would be a question you'd have to direct to info@. I can't really deal with the admin side. So Sophie, if you email info@, you'll get a response on that. Okay. YT, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. That's what I'm here for. Okay. As I said from the off, YT, I'm here to make you pass, help you pass this exam. Okay. So listen, I'm going to call it a day because I'm not going past 4 o'clock in the morning in Thailand. I can't do that. I got to be up in 2 hours. So listen, everybody, thanks for attending. Good luck, whatever your route forward is, whether you're signing up or not, or elite or standard or whatever. Work hard. If you're waiting for results next week and you're worried, don't worry so much. What's done is done. What's going to happen next Thursday is going to happen next Thursday. And you deal with what's on the pitch. You play what's on the pitch when it arrives. Okay? So listen, thank you everybody for attending. I'm off to bed because it's well past my bedtime, like 4 a.m. I hope to see you again soon. Good luck with your studies, and indeed, good luck going forward towards the MCS exam. Cheers. Thank you.